Number 1.
Flink was last seen in Aberdeen, Washington, at approximately 4 p.m. on February 21, 1969. She wanted to get some children's clothes and a new couch, and Barbaski, a woman in Moclops, Washington, offered to give clothes and a couch to her, but only if she came to pick them up that same day. Flink agreed and left home driving her roommate's red 1967 Ford Ranchero with the Washington license plate number U23307 on County Road 101 towards Moclops. She never returned home and has never been heard from again. Her brown leather wallet was found on a sidewalk in Hoquiam, Washington on February 23 and mailed to her post office box in Aberdeen, but she never picked it up. The car she was driving was found outside a tavern in the 700 block of J Street in Hoquiam on February 24. Flink knew Asynithe from before. Her ex-husband had wanted the Asynithe family to adopt the toddler son he and Flink had together, as he thought Flink was too young and too unprepared to be a mother. The child spent extended time periods with the Asynithes, while Flink worked long hours. Eventually, just before her disappearance, Flink got full custody of her son. During the custody battle between her and the Asynithe family, Flink had altercations with Barb at least twice. Flink's roommate knew of her history with Asynithe and advised her not to go to Moclops alone, but he couldn't come with her, and neither could two friends she asked, so she decided to go by herself. For years, Asynithe claimed Flink had never arrived in Moclops. In 2006, however, when re-interviewed by police over the phone while she was living in Georgia, she admitted Flink had actually come to pick up the couch and clothes and said she and Flink went to the Moclops tavern for drinks afterwards. Asynithe was in poor health at the time of the interview and said she felt too unwell to speak further. Following the phone interview, a detective flew to Georgia to confront Asynithe and ask her to disclose where Flink's remains were. He promised that there would be no prosecution if she confessed. Asynithe replied, "I can't help you with that." She died in 2008 without ever admitting to any involvement in Flink's disappearance. Flink worked as a waitress in 1969 at the Blue Beacon at the time of her disappearance and had no other source of income. After she went missing, her son was raised by his parents and didn't find out his mother was a missing person until he was in his teens. He still hopes for closure in his mother's disappearance. Police think Flink was murdered and that Asynithe was responsible, but don't believe she acted alone. Flink's case remains unsolved.
Number 2.
Jeanna Andre Cotta was 19 years old and pregnant when her family saw her for the last time. More than 40 years after Cotta was last seen by a family member inside a barn tack house on her family's property in the Allenwood section of the township, authorities are once again asking for the public's help to solve her disappearance. Cotta was an avid equestrian and the oldest of 8 children in a family that lived in Spring Lake Heights before they moved to Wall, where Cotta began participating in the 4-H club. In 1971, she was elected vice president of the Jumping Brook Riders 4-H club. She attended the Morven Park International Equestrian Institute in Leesburg, Virginia, and the Princeton Riding Academy. And she provided riding lessons at her family's property on Ridgewood Road. Cotta was last seen in the barn tack house by her brother, Brian Cotta, and his friend between 11:30 p.m. and midnight on June 26, 1973, police said. The next day, Dorothy Cotta reported her daughter missing. An investigation into the disappearance was opened, and there have been follow-up investigations during every decade since, police said. Between the years 2004-2006, investigators conducted about 250 interviews in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, Ohio and Florida. However, investigators are determined to identify anyone else who may have knowledge about Cotta during the time of her disappearance, Wilbert said. The latest investigation incorporated advanced technology, including computer searches, age progression, and a DNA comparison of Cotta's genetic makeup to those of unidentified remains. That search was done using CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System, and a nationwide law enforcement database. In addition to the Wall Township Police Department, the Monmouth County Prosecutor's Office, New Jersey State Police, U.S. Secret Service, Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children assisted. Investigators are still trying to identify a subject named Eric Shore, proper spelling unknown, who was reported to be approximately 40 years old at the time of Cotta's disappearance and from Staten Island or Long Island. It was also reported that his girlfriend at the time was employed as a hairdresser in Deal, police said. Cotta was about 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighed about 118 pounds at the time of her disappearance. She had brown hair, blue eyes and a mole near the left side of her mouth. She was last seen wearing blue landlubbers jeans, brown loafers, a white shirt with a blue design on it, and was carrying a round tweed purse. A website that profiles the cold cases of more than 9,000 missing people throughout the United States, Cotta was club-footed on her left foot, which would turn inward when she was tired. She was also asthmatic and had a lazy eye that would droop when she was tired or getting cold. She was 5 to 7 months pregnant at the time of her disappearance, though the identity of the child's father is still unknown, the website says. Cotta would currently be 66 years old and could go by the alias Jane Andre Cotta, authorities said. Cotta's parents both died in the years following her disappearance, but her siblings are still searching for her. Her case remains unsolved.
Number 3.
Dressed warmly for the winter weather in a gold-colored jacket, green rubber-insulated boots, and a brown ski mask, 13-year-old Richard William Griener left home for an afternoon of sledding on January 17, 1972. The boy headed toward a local park just 4 blocks from his house in Pekin, Illinois. He made it, for he joined some friends. However, the last time they saw him was around 5:30 p.m. Richard Griener was never seen again, alive or dead. The entire area was searched multiple times, but zero evidence was found of Griener, not even the blue sled that he'd been carrying that day. At this point, experts believe he is dead, but the case is still considered active as they're always looking for leads. There was one lead, and only one lead, that was a plausible one. William Freight Train Gwatney confessed to multiple murders of children during this time, including one that was kidnapped just 200 yards from where Griener was last seen. In the late 70s, 14 children were found dead near various railroad switches and near towns with an ongoing or just ended fair. Griener was never found, but he did have to cross a railroad switch to get back and forth from the sledding hill. Gwatney, whose nickname came from his ability to mimic a train whistle, traveled by trains around the Midwest to make money helping out at state and county fairs. After his confession, he was found incompetent to stand trial and was committed to a mental institution, where he died. Gwatney may have been a lead, and Griener's age was within Gwatney's preference, but there was one huge difference. The missing and murdered children attributed to Gwatney all disappeared in the summer. Griener went missing in the winter. The child remains missing and his case is unsolved. If you have any information on this case, please contact the Pekin Police Department.
Number 4.
Corinne June Groenenberg went missing from Modesto, California on November 1, 1973. She was last seen as she left her home and began walking. A family friend followed her until she reached the highway, where she was seen hitchhiking and ultimately getting into a blue or green truck with a male driver. There is some confusion as to her age. NamUs states that she was 16, while a Modesto Bee article says she was 14. I'm inclined to go with the newspaper article, since the information was more than likely supplied by her parents, plus, I think she looks closer to 14 in her photo. I couldn't find a birth record to eliminate any doubts, though. It appears she wasn't born in California. The family had moved to Modesto from Southern California a few months prior to her disappearance. There is really no information in articles or online case files that give any indication of what her intentions may have been. However, a couple things lead me to speculate that she may have been having problems at the time of her disappearance. One is pretty obvious: she was 14 and transplanted in a new city, away from everything she knew. NamUs states she was last seen at 12:29 p.m., November 1, 1973 was a Thursday. For some reason, it appears she wasn't at school. Why does a family friend follow her as she walks to the highway? If it were out of fear for her safety, why watch as she gets into a truck with an unknown male? And why not follow the truck? Did Corinne get picked up immediately as she approached the highway, or did the friend sit in his or her car, waiting until she got a ride? I guess there was a reason, some sort of circumstance that caused the friend to be concerned. Her family seems to believe she's alive. They moved back to Southern California shortly after Corinne's disappearance, but have continued to own Corinne's childhood home, although they don't live there, thinking she may go back there at some point. It would help to know if Corinne was having problems, if she told anyone where she was going, or if she was homesick for Southern California. Did she take anything with her when she walked away from the home? I stumbled across this unsolved homicide, which occurred in Modesto. On July 16, 1975, the body of Donna Joanne Peoples, age 17, was found in a grape vineyard near Mays Boulevard and Dakota Avenue in West Modesto. It was believed that she was killed elsewhere and disposed of in the vineyard. The articles on this homicide do not indicate when or how she died. It is known that the day she went missing, she had been out with friends and told them she was going on a date with a man named Lex. I have no reason to think these two cases are connected, but still thought it was worth mentioning in case Corinne had mentioned Lex or perhaps knew Donna. There has been some speculation that Donna may have been a Zodiac victim, but no evidence of that theory. There is another missing persons case from Modesto of Sylvia Stanley, who also reportedly got into a blue or green truck, but this was in 1986, probably not the same truck 13 years later, but more likely a strange coincidence. Sylvia Stanley is thought to be a possible speed freak killer's victim. There's really no way for me to lean toward one theory or another in this case. There are no unidentified females listed in NamUs from Stanislaus County. I'd sure like to know what was going on with Corinne in the days and hours leading up to her disappearance. I hope she ran away and has found happiness somewhere.
Number 5.
Griener was last seen in Lynn, Massachusetts on October 3, 1979. She was living in an apartment her father owned. She asked a teenage neighbor to watch her 2 children so she and her boyfriend, Michelle Gagnon, could go out and buy a refrigerator. The babysitter said the apartment was full of people when he arrived there and, at 6 p.m., Griener and Gagnon left with the group after about an hour. Gagnon came back to the apartment at approximately 1 a.m., but Griener never returned home and has never been heard from again. Not long afterwards, her car was found abandoned and burned in Saugus, Michigan. Gagnon dropped out of sight after her disappearance. He was a member of the Hells Angels motorcycle gang in 1979. He lived part-time with Griener and part-time with a friend, Robert Garbino. Photos of both men are posted with this case summary. Several weeks after Griener's disappearance, Garbino was shot to death. His body was dismembered and the parts scattered on property he owned. Police found his torso near where Griener's car was located after her disappearance and his hands and head in the house she'd shared with him and Gagnon. His murder remains unsolved. Police began looking for Gagnon to question him in connection with the murder, but he had dropped out of sight. Several weeks later was also found shot to death in an apartment in Bridgeport, Connecticut. His death was ruled as suicide, although some authorities believe he did not take his own life. Griener reportedly wanted to break up with Gagnon because he and his friends were using her car to transport drugs. It's unclear whether her disappearance is drug-related or has anything to do with Garbino and Gagnon's deaths, however. Griener's case was reopened in 2011. Authorities believe she was murdered, and they hope to identify her killer or at least find her remains.
Number 6.
Hazelton was last seen at the Alligator Place Apartments in Bolivar County, Mississippi on May 21, 2004. She had moved to Mississippi earlier that year with her boyfriend, James Arthur Fannings Jr., but maintained close contact with her family in Pennsylvania and called them frequently. They lived with Fannings' childhood friend, Chevon Pierre Mack. Within a month of their arrival in Mississippi, the couple began running out of money. Fannings and Hazelton's relationship deteriorated. He was repeatedly unfaithful, physically abused her and sometimes locked her in their bedroom. Hazelton last spoke to her parents in May 2004. She asked for money so she could leave Fannings and return home to Pennsylvania. They sent her the money, but she never came home and never contacted them again. Her parents reported her missing that December, after months passed without them being able to reach her. A photo of Fannings is posted with this case summary. He was arrested and charged with Hazelton's murder in January 2006. Mack said he saw Fannings shoot Hazelton in the head during an argument. After her death, Fannings made Mack help him dispose of the body. The men put Hazelton's body in a plastic barrel and loaded the barrel into her own green Chevrolet Blazer. They drove around in the vehicle with the body for 2 or 3 days, then attempted to burn it inside the barrel. Mack said he and Fannings took what was left and buried it in the woods near a creek in Duncan, Mississippi. Fannings and Mack then drove Hazelton's Blazer to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Sometime later, both men were arrested on unrelated charges and Hazelton's vehicle was impounded. Following his release from custody, Fannings began seeing another woman and they shared an apartment in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. After Hazelton's parents reported her missing, the police interviewed Mack about her disappearance and he told them about witnessing her murder. He stated he hadn't come forward earlier because he'd been afraid for his life. Fannings was tried late that in 2006. Except for Mack's testimony, the case against him was largely circumstantial. The jury deliberated only 16 minutes before convicting him of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison and is presently incarcerated in a maximum security facility in Mississippi. He appealed, but the courts upheld the conviction in 2008. Hazelton's family still hope to be able to find her remains. Foul play is suspected in her disappearance due to the circumstances involved.
Number 7.
Jeanna was rollerblading with a friend in her hometown of Fargo, North Dakota, during the evening hours of June 28, 1993. A police officer saw the two girls stop at a local convenience store at approximately 10:30 p.m. According to Jeanna's friend, they headed back towards their homes shortly thereafter. Jeanna's friend said that she arrived at her own residence and watched Jeanna rollerblade to the corner of South 15th Street and South 4th Avenue. Her friend went inside and Jeanna has never been seen again. She never arrived at her family's house, which was only a few hundred feet away from the corner. Jeanna's family was initially unconcerned when she didn't arrive home, as they thought she was with other relatives. They reported her missing the next afternoon. She wasn't carrying any money when she disappeared. Jeanna's neighbor, Kyle Kenneth Bell, confessed to molesting and murdering Jeanna in January 1995, nearly 2 years after her disappearance. A photo of him is posted with this case summary. Bell stated that he sexually assaulted Jeanna in his garage during the evening she vanished. She threatened to tell her parents about the incident, and Bell hit her. Bell claimed her death was accidental. He maintained that she slipped while wearing her rollerblades after he struck her and died as a result of her injuries. Bell said that he dumped Jeanna's body in the Cheyenne River shortly after her death. A search of the area began in 1995 after his confession, but no evidence was located. Bell claimed that his confession was coerced by authorities and recanted his statements in May 1995. He had already been convicted of molesting other young girls at the time. Meanwhile, the continuing search of the Cheyenne River produced a piece of rope and a cinder block in 1996. The materials matched elements found inside Bell's residence, and it is believed they may have been used in the disposal of Jeanna's remains. Authorities matched several hairs found in Bell's truck to Jeanna's DNA, and he was convicted of her murder in 1999. Bell was sentenced to life in prison. He escaped from a transport van in New Mexico in October 1999, less than 1 month after he was sentenced in the crime. Bell's whereabouts remained a mystery until January 9, 2000, when he was arrested in Dallas, Texas. America's Most Wanted profiled Bell on its television show the weekend prior to his capture. He was recognized by a viewer of the program as Christopher Larson, an alias Bell employed during his time as a fugitive. Bell has since been imprisoned. Jeanna has never been recovered, and searches for her body have been discontinued due to financial constraints. Her mother died in 2009, aged 58.
Number 8.
Sarah was last seen with her 5-year-old sister at the end of Richard Street in Joliet, Illinois on July 21, 1981. The girls met friends at that location, and Sarah walked across the street from the group after having an argument with another child. She was reported missing by her family at approximately 9 p.m. that evening, but no trace of her was found. Sarah has never been seen again. A former neighbor of the Avon family, Ernest Wilson Sr., died in Arkansas in January 1993. After his death, his nephew, Robert Taddage, went to the police and said Wilson had made a deathbed revelation about Sarah's disappearance. Wilson was unable to speak at this point but drew a distinctive triangular shape on a piece of paper and put a circle inside the triangle. Some of his family members thought the drawing was meant to represent the triangular-shaped lot in Joliet where Wilson had lived in 1981. According to Taddage, Wilson's son had implicated himself and another boy in Sarah's death. He was 15 years old in 1981 and was known to be mentally disturbed. In a subsequent conversation with Taddage, the nephew admitted he had sexually molested Sarah and was in the house when she was murdered. Taddage said he thought Wilson had buried Sarah's body on his Joliet property in order to protect his son. A witness has backed up the story, saying that in 1981, when the witness was a teenager, he went outside during the night and saw Wilson digging a deep hole in the yard with a shovel. The hole was chest deep. When the witness asked Wilson why he was digging, Wilson said he planned to transplant sunflower plants. On another night, the same witness saw Wilson operating his bulldozer, pushing mounds of dirt near Hickory Creek and knocking down trees at the junction of Hickory Creek and Spring Creek. Later, the Wilson family moved their above-ground swimming pool to near the location where Wilson had used his bulldozer to pile up dirt. After getting the tip from Taddage, police dug up the vacant lot on Miller Avenue that had been Wilson's property in 1981. The search turned up nothing and was called off after a few days. However, one official involved believed the area being excavated was too small for them to be sure Sarah's body wasn't buried on the lot. The witness who saw Wilson digging the chest-deep hole thought the authorities were not excavating deep enough during their search for Sarah, and he told them so, but they paid no attention. In January 1985, 3.5 years after Sarah vanished, police thought they saw her picture in the apartment of David R. Collins. Collins, who has a long criminal record and uses many aliases, was charged with kidnapping one teenager in California and sexually abusing several others in New Orleans, Louisiana. 25 pictures of young girls were found in his apartment. Police published them in newspapers in hopes that the public could identify the people in them. One of the subjects in the pictures was believed to be Sarah, but was eventually identified as another person. One other photograph was thought of be of Nolita Del Valle, a 9-year-old who disappeared from Massachusetts in 1976, but this possibility was also ruled out. Collins is not believed to have been involved in either girl's case. Police dug underneath an old garage on Noel Road, south of Joliet, in 2004. They were hoping to find Sarah's remains. They did find some clothing, but they could not find any evidence relating to Sarah's case. Her disappearance remains unsolved.